So I'm here with Sydney Sweeney, star of the newest superhero movie, Madam Web. Sydney, how you doing today? That's so great to hear. I'm doing good too. Thank you for asking. And by the way, if I may say so, you're much prettier in person. Oh, it looks like you're joined by your co-star of the film, Dakota Johnson. Dakota, how are you? So Dakota, I heard you play an EMT in the film. There's even a scene where you teach the girls how to do CPR. Would you mind demonstrating? The toilet's good to go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or depending on what time you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. And just like they say in The Godfather Part 3, when I thought I was out, Marvel pulls me back in. They just announced the other day the cast of Fantastic Four, and I'm always a sucker to go see a movie in IMAX. Even if it's a movie that I'm not that interested in, if it's playing in IMAX, there's always a better chance that I'll go and check it out. When it comes to the Spider-Man movies, you guys kill it. You guys absolutely kill it. The Tom Holland movies, the original trilogy with Tobey Maguire, I absolutely adore. I know people don't love the third one. I like Spider-Man 3. I really do. I think it's a movie that got crapped on at the time it came out. You look at the Andrew Garfield ones, I think his first movie was still pretty solid. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is definitely on the side of not as great. But ultimately, like I would say every Spider-Man movie, there hasn't been a bad one, I would say. And then we get to just these spin-offs, and I've never been a fan of the Tom Hardy Venom movies. I just don't think they're that good. I know there's a lot of people that have a soft spot for Venom, and I think they might have blinders on when they watch those movies. Morbius, I did not even see. And then here we are with Madam Web, the newest spin-off of the Spider-Verse, I guess you could say. You know, ultimately, I don't know where this movie falls in as far as like the overall Spider-Verse. So this movie takes place in 2003, and they do set up Peter Parker as a newborn essentially at the end. But I was thinking like, okay, 2003, I don't think the timeline works for the Tom Holland timeline, because Tom Holland was introduced 2016 in Civil War, and I think that movie does actually take place around that time. And I don't think Tom Holland was supposed to be 13 in that movie. I think he's supposed to be a little bit older, like at least 15. So I'm thinking that Madam Web is its own universe with its own thing going on. There are a lot of Peter Parker connections. We see Uncle Ben. We see Peter's mom, Mary Parker. We don't see the dad. We don't see Aunt May, although there is a little bit of a tease towards that, where Ben Parker has a line where he says to Dakota Johnson, he tells her he's got like a date and he thinks it's serious. So that's their little wink wink towards Aunt May. I do think this movie takes place in a completely different universe than the Tom Holland ones, which that makes sense for multiple reasons. Because one, if this movie bombs or doesn't do good, which it's tracking like it's going to not do good and not make a ton of money, then they could just kind of write it off and all right, it was just its own thing. But if the movie were to have success and they wanted to bring these characters back, well, what did the last Tom Holland Spider-Man movie do? It basically introduced this multiverse where they can bring all these different characters in from all these different universes. So it kind of makes sense from that standpoint that they can kind of play it whichever way they want to, depending on how the movie does. And I would ultimately say that you probably won't see these characters again. I mean, this movie has been facing an uphill battle pretty much ever since the first trailer dropped, and people have just been ripping on it for the dialogue. Parts of this story worked for me. There's a specific part of the story where the characters are basically on the run from this villain. I actually like that kind of thing. It kind of reminds me of like a Terminator movie.
Come with me if you want to live.
Which is basically the characters are on the run and they have to hide out and they have to use their resources to survive, essentially. They have the Dakota Johnson as Madam Web. She has her moments where she's trying to figure out like what is going on in her life. We don't really know much about her personality. She's not really a people person. She apparently likes American Idol. And then I think her supposed to be character development is her basically coming around and like becoming like a mentor for these girls. And that's the idea. There is a sequence where she has to go to Peru. I basically refer to this as the Yoda moment. She basically has to learn about her past. I was waiting for a training montage, which never happened. I think the filmmakers were at least clever enough to say, we're not doing that right now. We just don't have the time to have this whole montage of her running up and down a mountain with Yoda on her back or something like that. I did have a failed prediction in this movie. So the main antagonist, this villain, his motive in this movie is to kill these three girls, to kill these three teenagers. And the reason he's trying to kill them is because he has these visions or these dreams where these girls are going to kill him in the future. Once again, going back to Terminator, he's trying to eliminate them before they ultimately kill him. But my prediction was the final set piece, the big fight at the end, was going to be at this guy's apartment because that's where he kept the spider. Something was going to happen, and it was going to be because of his actions that these girls ultimately get their powers, that ultimately is the cause of his death. That didn't happen. All right, let's talk about some actors. I guess we got to start with the lead, Dakota Johnson. First off, I think Dakota Johnson needs to try a new time of the year because Valentine's Day has not been good to her. Maybe like St. Patrick's Day, or even more fitting for this type of movie, Groundhog's Day, you know, the whole doing everything over again. But Dakota Johnson, she's an actress. I never disliked her, but I've never really liked her, I guess. She's kind of been that in between with me. I think she could be a really strong supporting actress. I've seen her in movies where I really liked her. One movie that I saw her in that I thought she did a good job was Bad Times at the El Royale. But when it comes to being a lead actress, especially in a superhero movie, yeah, it wasn't working for me. And then we're going to move on to another actress that I'm not really a huge fan of, and that's Sydney Sweeney. And to be fair, I've never really seen her in much. I guess the one thing that I've actually seen her in was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but she had such a small role in that. I'm really kind of criticizing her just based on trailers for movies, because she had that new movie that came out last year. It was Anyone But You. And I just remember watching her acting in that trailer and just thinking like she should be in like student films. This is so bad. And when I saw her in the trailer for this, I mean, first off, the wardrobe department did not do her any favors. They basically gave her like dollar store glasses and just like the weirdest schoolgirl uniform, which was just, why put her in this uniform? It just, her acting wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. She still wasn't great. I guess I'll say this, she didn't really win me over in this movie. All right, I feel like I've been crapping on this movie enough. Let's talk about some things that I did like as far as acting. I'm gonna go with the other two girls that were kind of Sydney Sweeney's counterparts, Celeste O'Connor and Isabella Merced. They had a lot of personality. Thought they did well for what they were working with. Adam Scott, I could see him as like an Uncle Ben, maybe in like 15-20 years when they're still making more Spider-Man movies, or at this point they've rebooted it for the 17th time. Adam Scott, why not? And now I have to talk about probably the worst part of this movie, and that is the villain. I don't even remember his name. I'm just going to either refer to him as not Chris Messina, or as they refer to him in the movie, Guy on Ceiling. I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like 80% of his dialogue was 80-yard. And just so much of his dialogue is just stale. You know, I'm glad that they didn't do the thing where his motive was he wants to destroy the world or take over the world. I'm just so sick of seeing that in like every superhero movie. So to have the motive that it's just, he really is just looking out for himself, I think that's actually a pretty good motive. I don't even remember if he had like a villain name. Like obviously like every superhero or villain, they'll have their real name, they'll have their like alter ego name. I don't even remember if he even had an alter ego name. I don't even remember what his actual name was. Yeah, the ADR thing, it was just throwing me off. I'm just like, what is happening? There were times when I'm watching this thinking this movie could work somehow, and it just doesn't. But that's my take on Madam Web. It's finally over. Now we must find a new future film to sacrifice for the sake of laughter. Speaking of which, when does Kraven the Hunter come out again?
Oh, you just figured that out now?
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.